I always saw the still image three-dimensional. So, because it was always kind of moving. So just coming from my background, I never, that was never me, you know? I always kind of saw it as this thing which was constantly in a state of moving, you know? And I also saw it as a form of communication. And by that, I mean trying to figure out like a physical vocabulary. I'm just trying to help the photographer. I was always kind of like dancing as a child, but my formal kind of interest in classical dance began at an after-school program in Erie, Pennsylvania. You know, they needed boys. We literally had to just like walk out, lift the right hand, lift the left hand. The ballerinas would come in front of us. We'd put our hand, we'd lift them. They'd go arabesque, arabesque, and then we'd walk out and then the show would begin. They just needed boys to lift the girls twice, and that was it. But I was kind of interested in this whole like dance, classical ballet thing. And the teacher was like, well, why don't you come and take formal ballet class to see if you like it? You have to realize at this time, an African-American ballet dancer, there weren't any. There just weren't any. And we were all black, and we were like 10 people in a studio, maybe about the size of the corner of this book, you know? And, but they taught it so much with love. So it was this really kind of joyous, love-filled shotgun in a dance school, you know? And from there, I kind of just started to realize that I wanted to have a career in it. I was Presidential Scholar in the Arts, which allowed me some money to travel and do auditions abroad in Europe. And I went to Europe and auditioned with the Stuttgart Ballet, Maurice Béjart, the Hamburg Ballet, and what's another one? The Royal Ballet of Flanders. I got contracts in all of those places. I decided to go to Stuttgart, but they said, oh, we don't have a contract for you for this year. You have to come back next year. But I didn't even know that. You know, I was 17, I didn't really understand how it would work. I thought you go, you know, you audition, they say yes or no, and you start work on, or you don't start work. I didn't know that they actually hired like a season in advance. That's kind of how it all started, you know what I mean? So I was just a dancer. I was a dancer in the best ballet company, you know, in the world for 35 years. Father just recently reminded me that when I was 12, I used to organize backyard fashion shows from my grandmother's stock, because she was a seamstress. And it was this whole garage was just nothing. And I used to like have these little fashion shows. And my dad said I was so mean because I would say, you have to be here at 10. And if the kids in the neighborhood didn't show up, they couldn't be in the show. And they have to be in the audience. Because I was so strict, you know, which I think is hilarious. Like, I was actually kind of directing, you know, défilés before I even, I mean, I'm just realizing that now, like 30 years later, after, you know, doing shows. So it's kind of hilarious. Twice a year, Ballet Frankfurt had a residency in Paris at the Théâtre du Châtelet. And it always fell during Fashion Week. So everyone in the world was there. Joan Juliet Buck, who was at the time editor of French Vogue, gave us a party the first night. So there was this big, and so Valentino everyone was in the audience, Gautier, I mean, it was like a whole thing. And of course me, because I love fashion, I'd always loved fashion, I was, you know, bold, and I would say, oh, I would go up and meet them and touch it, you know, say, oh, hello, I love your work. I've never seen a fashion show. And they'd be like, oh, why don't you come to the fashion show? Because I was also the principal dancer. So it was kind of nice. They would invite me to their show, and then I would invite them to see my show. And then Issey invited me to basically become the art director for the men's line, which I did with no experience. I didn't even know what that meant, you know, but he knew that I loved fashion. He said, well, why don't you come and try to do this? And I was like, I don't really know what that means, but of course, you know. So that's kind of how it started in the way of me working on actual fashion shows, you know. It just happens, you know, and I know that sounds, you know, maybe a bit trite and trivial, but when I started working with the Stones, I think Mick was really interested in having someone work with him who understood theater, you know, because he knew that I was a dancer with Bill, with the Frankfurt Ballet. He also knew he wanted someone who understood fashion, because he knew that I was working with Issey, And he wanted someone who understood the concept of putting a big show on, because at the time, all the Frankfurt Ballet performances were huge. I mean, they were like spectacles, you know. I think Mick was looking for someone who kind of understood all those, or had at least an idea about all of those different things, because I didn't really know why. I was like, Mick Jagger wants to have a choreographer, but, you know, why? You know, I was like, you know. We were just friends. I loved their work. I'd seen some work that they had done in Amsterdam. We also had a residency with Frankfurt Ballet in Amsterdam, at Holland, the Holland Festival. So they would literally just come to see my company perform. And we just kind of kept this relationship. And I think when they were doing the relaunch of Calvin Klein, they invited me to come and work with them. And that was the first time I kind of worked in a proper like advertising campaign. And they really wanted those early Calvin images of Jessica Miller and Travis Fimmel, I think, big actor. They really wanted this really specific type of physicality. And they were so fresh. Like Eminem did the restyling of the whole thing. It was a relaunch of Calvin, basically. And yeah, they really wanted this physical language of the model, how she looked, you know, so it was very strong. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't really know myself. I was like, are you sure? And I was like, okay. And I love them so much and I respect them so much, first as artists, because of course I knew of their work in fashion, but I knew them first as artists. Then we started shooting Gucci together, and then we started shooting Saint Laurent together, and we were just, and still are, just a really tight, you know, collaboratory team. You know, they were some of my most favorite and most dearest collaborators. First of all, I love Tom so much, incredibly loyal, also this ridiculous level of curiosity. I remember the first time I met him, he didn't even know what I was there for. And you know, I was behind and I was doing the thing, you know, it was a very intense shot. And he's like, yeah, I was like, what is, that's so sweet that they allow this guy, you know, just to pretend that he's a model behind Binks over there. And I was like, what? Because no one told him. Then the last day, you know, he comes over and he says, Stephen, thank you so much. You know, I know why you were here now. They just told me, you know, like that. You know? And I was like, thank you. You're like, thank you. He's like, it was such a wonderful seeing you work. And, you know, it's fantastic when you have to stay in contact. And then he asked me to come and help him in London with a men's show he was doing, and we shot a hit campaign. And it just kind of kept going, you know? And so I knew he was about to go into production for the second film, and I get this, you know, call from him. He says, well, you know, I'm thinking about doing not a show, but a music video, but not a music video, but a fashion show. And I'm like, okay, I'm down, whatever, you know? You don't like, because I knew whatever it was gonna be major. We shot for 5 days to make 3 minutes. But it was that type of a project where, hey everybody, let's put on a show, you know, let's do a video with Gaga and, you know, Nile Rodgers and Tom Ford and every fabulous model on the planet at that time, you know. I always saw the still image three-dimensional. So, because it was always kind of moving. So just coming from my background, I never, that was never me, you know? I always kind of saw it as this thing which was constantly in a state of moving, you know? And I also saw it as a form of communication. And by that, I mean, trying to figure out like a physical vocabulary. I'm just trying to help the photographer. Some photographers say, it's just, we don't have to do anything. We just have to click. We just see you, we just have to click. You know, because I'm like, yes, and, you know, here, and longer neck, arch the back a little bit. Very often, traditionally, that would be the things that a photographer would often do. It's really all about nuance to capture a moment that will never, ever happen again. I listen, I dream with them. I try and help to bring, my experience, my dreaming into the picture. With all of those people that we've spoken about, the one common thing that they have is curiosity. The curiosity to know that, oh, well, Stephen might have an idea, so maybe we should ask him. So it initially comes from their smartness, and then I just kind of like fall into it, And that's what I also bring, I do kind of bring 35 years of experience to every job that I do. So that Flowers video, I just wanted her to be her. With certain artists, you want them to look more like themselves. And that was really what I wanted to do. Of course, I knew who she was, but I never saw her on tour. I don't even remember seeing a video. So I met her there. I didn't do research on her. I met her where she was at. And where she was at is what you saw in the video, which is free, which is powerful, which is curious. And so we just riffed off of that. That evolution is, fortunately for me, very tightly connected to me just trying to be the best Stephen Galloway. And that's how that goes, because the more I learn, the more I listen, the more I observe, the more I look in things in different directions. That's what propels me forward, And so there's so many wonderful things coming up. A lot of them I can't really talk about, but they make my heart smile, and I'm having a great time.